This is the CJ Berliman Show.
Hello, it's your friend CJ, and in this week's episode, we reveal how Iran has forced the United States to forever change its priorities in the Middle East, and to the point in which US interests and objectives are now diametrically opposed to the state of Israel, which is why many credible analysts are predicting a start of a Cold War between the two countries and a total collapse of the Zionist occupation within a few short years. Certainly, there's a lot to unpack here. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show, while not forgetting to turn your notifications on so you never miss a single episode. Now let's get into it. American war criminal Henry Kissinger famously characterized his country's attitude towards great power politics by declaring, "America has no permanent friends or enemies, only interests." You only have to see how Germany and Japan have emerged as America's closest allies in Europe and Asia after World War II to understand that point. But today, Kissinger's words are the sum total of Israel's living nightmare, because Zionists are now watching on in horror as Israel's special relationship with the United States devolves into a relationship of open hostility, with the US Vice President echoing Kissinger's words to summarize the growing distance between the US and Israel.
Israel and the United States are fundamentally always aligned. It's just not true. We're different countries. We have different needs. We have different geographies.
Do you trust them?
I don't trust anybody. When it comes to international affairs and diplomacy, I don't trust anyone. And I think that we just have to continually be laser focused on what our interests are.
Until now, every US administration has gone to great pains to convince the world there's zero daylight between Israel and the United States. So much so that on the odd occasion in which there has been obvious disagreements, they were never aired in public and only behind closed doors. Because the goal was to convince Israel's potential enemies that the Zionist army is the most powerful military in the Middle East, with the American superpower standing by its side always. But in the first week of June, Trump became the first US president to break this long-standing pact when he suggested Israel's military strength is a total mirage, without total and unconditional support from the United States.
If it weren't for Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu worked well with me, but he will tell you, we're the ones with the guns, we're the ones with the whole deal, we're the ones with the B-2 bombers, etc. If it weren't for Donald Trump, Israel would have been eviscerated.
Days later, Trump widened this growing rift by slamming Israel while praising Iran at the G7 summit, constituting an unprecedented break in the Zionist Crusader alliance.
We're dealing with people that I think are very rational people.
A surprising turn of events today as President Trump praised Iranian leaders while slamming his closest ally in the Middle East.
I'm not happy with the way Israel has handled themselves with Lebanon.
This is what angered him. Israeli strikes on Beirut Sunday aimed at rooting out Iran-backed Hezbollah fighters. The Iranians said the ongoing fighting in Lebanon could jeopardize their fragile new agreement with Trump.
Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long, and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody.
This was Trump not only scolding Israel for trying to sabotage his peace deal with Iran, but also cutting the Zionist state adrift in favor of Iran for two strategic reasons. Firstly, Trump is angered and humiliated by Israel for dragging him into a catastrophic war with deceptively misleading intelligence. But more importantly, the outcome of this war has handed Iran de facto and permanent control over the Strait of Hormuz, and therefore with it the fate of the American economy. Which means the strategic interests of the United States and Israel in the Middle East are no longer aligned. They run counter to each other. Iran has flipped the script. You see, anytime Israel now disobeys the US by attacking Iran or Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Iranian government will choke off the Strait of Hormuz, sending US energy and food prices soaring upwards again, while damaging the re-election prospects of the president and his political party. Iran now has total control over the United States, and there's absolutely nothing Israel can do about it. And even if the US wanted to bomb Iran in retaliation, well, the Iranian government now knows the US only has a finite number of missiles, which means the US can't bomb its way to victory, leaving it with no choice but to establish closer diplomatic ties with Tehran. And closer US ties to Iran means severed ties with Israel. The New York Times has described this as the biggest geopolitical shift in the Gulf since the start of the Iran-Iraq War, while calling the Iranian government America's new deputy sheriff in town, a view shared by prominent Israeli journalists and analysts.
So I guess that very soon the blame will be directed at Israel. And I guess that in any case, after Donald Trump, I don't see, would it be a Democrat or Republican, I don't see any American president who will continue the special relations with Israel, with all their implications. And this, in my view, is a major change in the Middle East, because Israel, without the United States, without the unconditional full support, is not the same Israel. And therefore, the Middle East will not be the same Middle East.
In essence, Israel screwed America with its lies, manipulation, and deceit. And now the US government, which is finally following the lead of the American people, is screwing the Zionist state in return. This tit for tat is set to become a full-blown spat, because both the American people and the US government now understand that Israel is a liability or a noose around America's neck. Which means Israeli leaders better start familiarizing themselves with history, specifically the part where the world's most powerful empires regularly abandon their colonies. And they would also do well to learn about the collapse of apartheid South Africa, in which after launching multiple wars against its neighbors, the US stood by and did nothing, because it could see the racist regime's days were numbered. This same story can now be told about Israel, because Iranian resistance has destroyed the Zionist Crusader alliance, and with it soon the State of Israel itself, a view shared by one of the Israeli military's top correspondents.
עבור כל הישראלים, ולדעתי גם עבור הדורות הבאים של הישראלים, כי היום הזה מסמן היפוך במזרח התיכון. ישראל הייתה המעצמה החזקה, המובילה במזרח התיכון עם גיבוי אמריקני, וההסכם הזה סולל לאיראן את הדרך להיות המעצמה המשמעותית ביותר באזור. ברגע שאיראן מתחילה להוציא נפט, מתחילה להרוויח מאות מיליארדים מהנפט שלה שעד היום היא לא יכלה לייצא אותו, מקבלת 24 מיליארד דולר כספים קפואים, מקבלת 300 מיליארד דולר תוכנית סיוע שכלולה בהסכם, כל הדברים האלה יהפכו את איראן במהירות למעצמה מאוד חזקה, היא תוכל לחזור ולתמוך בשלוחים, בחיזבאללה, בחות'ים, לחמש אותם מחדש, ומעל כל אלה יש לנו משטר נקמני יותר מקודמו, זאת אומרת יש לו עכשיו מוטיבציה לנקום, עם יכולת גרעינית, כך שיכול מאוד להיות שאנחנו נקבל בהסכם הזה איראן לא רק חזקה, בסופו של דבר גם איראן גרעינית שיש לה יכולת העשרה והיא תחליט מתי היא הופכת אותה לפצצה.
It's only going to get worse for Israel from here, as the United States begins challenging and countering the Zionist state across multiple fronts, including Lebanon, Iran, and Syria, with one senior Israeli official telling Israel's Channel 13, and I quote, "The message we have received from the Americans in recent weeks is clear. You had permission to operate without restrictions, but that period is now over," end quote. An Israeli newspaper says Israeli officials are now panicked by the likelihood that the widening gulf with the United States will result in delays in arms shipments and eventually an arms embargo. Given voters in Italy, Japan, Spain, Belgium, Holland, Slovenia, and Canada have pushed their respective governments to ban the sale of weapons to Israel.
Speaker, a UN report has found that Israel's warfare in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of genocide. The liberal government is legally obligated by the Genocide Convention to prevent and stop Netanyahu's attack on Palestinians. Turning a blind eye to mass casualties is not an option. Entire families have been decimated. Children are starving to death. When will the liberals live up to their obligations, sanction Netanyahu and his extreme cabinet, and finally put in place an actual arms embargo? Here.
It's important to note here that the Canadian government's pledge to not sell weapons to Israel doesn't apply to sales that had already been approved. But the broader point here is this: that the decision by Canada to end military ties with Israel was not led by Canada's political leaders, but by the Canadian people themselves. who now sympathize more with the Palestinians due to moral outrage over Israel's genocide in Gaza. You see, in a democracy, leaders don't lead voters. It's the other way around, because politicians are political entrepreneurs, meaning they skate to where the puck is because entrepreneurs seize and capitalize on opportunity. This is why American political entrepreneurs are now running for election on pro-Palestine and anti-Israel platforms. Not because they're righteous, enlightened, or moral, but because American voters have divorced themselves from Israel, leaving politicians with no alternative but to chase votes by mirroring the pro-Palestinian views of their constituents. Last week's Democratic primary in New York drives this point home, because here we saw pro-Palestine candidates win 100% of Democratic primaries against their pro-Israel rivals.
I don't think that Israel has played a bigger role in any district any more than in this particular district. We are talking about New York's 10th district. I mean, chance to be the New York 10 Dem nominee. Dan Goldman, the incumbent, a hero of the Trump first impeachment trial among Democrats, only has a 1, 2, 3% chance of actually holding on to his Democratic designation to be the Dem nominee in this particular race. Brad Lander, who was last seen running for mayor in New York City, 98% chance. The reason why Dan Goldman is in trouble is because of the issue of Israel. He is seen by many in that district as being too pro-Israel. Lander has the endorsement of Zohran Mamdani, who, you know, obviously when it comes to the issue of Israel, has been much more pro-Palestinian than pro-Israeli.
This was New York City, home to the largest Jewish population in America, with New York's 10th congressional district being the most Jewish district in the country. Here voters rejected a pro-Israel Jewish incumbent by a whopping 30 points in favor of a Jewish candidate who calls Gaza a genocide and demands cutting the sale of weapons to the state of Israel. The pro-Palestine candidate's win is consistent with a recent CNN poll which found that a majority of American Jews believe Israel is committing genocide. One Jew defeating another Jew didn't stop the Israel lobby blaming anti-Semitism for the pro-Israel candidate's defeat, because this is what AIPAC always does. What's surprisingly new here is the mainstream media calling out the Israel lobby's deceptive ruse.
I just, hearing a lot of people talking about the anti-Semitism in New York City, and last night proved the anti-Semitism in New York City, and this is Mamdani's fault, this is so-and-so's fault, this is this left. No, it's not. It's really not. If you want to blame anybody for what happened last night, in my opinion, if you want to blame anybody, Jonathan, I think you have to blame Benjamin Netanyahu. 4 years of maximalist aims, 4 years of ahistoric goals in the Middle East. Did anybody in the Middle East, the idea that you're going to be able to brutalize children and women in Gaza with bombing that looks indiscriminate on TV day in and day out for years, that you're going to be able to level half of Lebanon, that you're going to be able to continue to allow thugs to run wild in the West Bank and brutalizing Palestinians, brutalizing Christians in Bethlehem, brutalizing Christians across that area, along with Palestinian Muslims, especially Palestinian Muslims, blowing up Catholic churches in Gaza.
If that didn't knock you off your feet, then surely this next clip will blow your mind, in which the US Vice President openly admits that Israel deliberately weaponizes anti-Semitism to silence and intimidate its critics.
It's just not the case that every criticism of Bibi Netanyahu's policy decisions leads to anti-Semitism or is anti-Semitic. And so I do think that sometimes, advocates of Israel or pro-Israel people in the United States make two critical mistakes. One, on the one hand, is not delineating between America's interests and Israeli interests, because they're not always the same. But the second is always conflating criticism of a particular government with Jew hatred. Because if everything is Jew hatred, then nothing is Jew hatred.
Now make no mistake, J.D. Vance is not pro-Palestine or pro-human rights. He cares only about his own political future. And like all savvy political entrepreneurs, he understands what every political candidate knows to be true in America today: that supporting Israel is politically unprofitable, almost everywhere in the Western world because every American, every European, every Brit, and every Australian under the age of 50 basically hates the Zionist state. A reality that Israel knows to be a death sentence, given it cannot survive without US military support and European trade, leaving Israel with only a couple of strategies to prolong its survival. It can either dial up the anti-Islam hate, like it always does when experiencing a public relations crisis, or it can turn to its other favourite trick to swing public opinion: political assassinations and false flag terror attacks. I mean, you now have prominent Israeli journalists telling their Israeli audiences that America needs another 9/11 to reclaim support for the Zionist state among American voters, as former Israeli spies openly threaten to kill or dispose of Western politicians who don't toe the line for Israel.
The Iranian nuclear program is going to be destroyed, and anyone who gets in the way, it doesn't matter where they are, even if they are politicians in the West, they are going to fall, because we cannot afford.
Hold on, did you hear what he just said? He threatened politicians in the West that if they don't agree with Israel's war against Iran, that they're going to fall. And remember, he's an Israeli agent. Are you saying Israel will murder politicians in the West or get rid of them politically through bribery or whatever else? What do you mean the politicians in the West will fall if they don't agree to back Israel's war against Iran?
Yeah, we will not vote for them anymore.
Oh, no, well, you don't vote for them now. You're not in our country.
We exposed Mossab Yusuf's lies and deceit for Israel in an episode 2 years ago. You can watch it here if you haven't already. Because it's important you understand how Zionist-funded Islamophobia is not only weaponized to undermine solidarity for Palestinians, but also in other places where Muslim populations are persecuted and oppressed. Like in India, where 200 million Muslims are under attack from the country's Hindu nationalist government, which is using the genocide of Palestinians to incite a Holocaust against Muslims in India and Kashmir, not only with words, but also with deeds. With more than 25 mosques and madrasas demolished in BJP-ruled states during the past 6 weeks alone. But the crisis is even worse for Muslims in the Indian state of Bengal.
India is witnessing a large-scale crackdown on Muslims, primarily Bengali Muslims, who are being evicted from their homes and expelled from the country. It is an alarming development that has its roots in what seemed to be a simple bureaucratic exercise 6 years ago, the updating of India's National Register of Citizens, the NRC. For many, despite being born and raised in India, despite being Indian citizens, their names are missing from that list. The outcome, mass deportations into neighboring Bangladesh. Anyone who has been tracking Indian politics could have seen this coming. For more than a decade now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP government has systematically dehumanized Muslims, especially those of Bengali ethnicity. They have been branded infiltrators. That kind of messaging gets amplified on countless Indian news outlets by journalists, all too willing to cast a minority group as a threat to the Hindu majority.
Please keep your eyes on India and Kashmir. We will do our best to bring you all of the latest news and developments, like we have here with my latest article for our Patreon members, in which I outline how Israel is betting we will get tired of protesting its criminality before it's held accountable, which is why we plan to work harder, not less, having recently expanded our operations by hiring a social media manager to help provide our audience on Facebook and Instagram with more materials and resources. But we urgently need your help. And by urgently, I mean desperately, remembering that the Israel lobby successfully pressured YouTube into demonetizing our channel 9 months ago. Therefore, we kindly ask that you please support our effort to expose and confront the Zionist lobby and other injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of our show at patreon.com/CJ We can't produce, sustain, and grow the show without your help, and we offer exclusive content, analysis, and other benefits to those who do. So whether you're watching or listening, we wish you a good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.